Hello, welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. This is the Valentine's Day edition of Ghana Tonight. And guess what? President Kufuor finally sacks the finance minister, Kenneth Oriata, and reshuffles his minister in a major shake-up. Barely 9 months to election 2024. That's the Valentine gift of President Kufuor to you and I, the Ghanaian people. A move too late or just in time? What's your take on this Valentine's gift from the president? We have a conversation including an exclusive with the former chair of the NPP, Freddie Blake. Stay with us. Also, the Public Accounts Committee is demanding more answers from the Kufuor government. How and why $12 million was spent on the botched Ejapa deal. We hear from a member of the committee and the anti-corruption campaigner. Stay with us here on Ghana Tonight. Also tonight, our Manifesto Check series. As always, we call it the Manifesto Check. Your focus and our focus tonight is on the state of the free Wi-Fi for senior high schools policy. That's captured in the 2020 manifesto of the NPP as well. We have a conversation on this one teacher, one laptop policy that was also announced, which was not captured in the manifesto, but it was a promise to teachers as well. So really, do they have the one laptop that's been promised them? Guess what? As we started the tracking of the promises in the education sector, a number of things have been happening, and we're glad to let you know that the impact is being felt so far. I want to thank you, as always. You're an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and X. Let's get talking. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
The Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, has referred a petition from some sports journalists demonstrating against the underperformance of the Black Stars to the Committee on Youth and Sports for a probe. The protesters at the Save Ghana football demonstration are demanding the resignation of football authorities following the Black Stars' early exits from the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations.
Mr. Speaker, our estimated budget for the 2023 African Cup of Nations tournament was $8,506,450 United States dollars. And this was to cater for the pre-tournament stages, that is our pre-campaign stages. The ministry had negotiated to pay bonuses should the team progress to the next round of the tournament. Therefore, no qualification bonuses were paid due to the team early exit at the group stage.
The Public Accounts Committee has issued a warning to the University of Ghana regarding 6 uncompetitive procurement infractions, among other breaches in the Auditor General's report for December 2022. Appearing before the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, PAC, the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Nanaba Appiah-Ampfo, attributed the procurement and other lapses to gaps between the university administrative functions and the semi-autonomous colleges.
We operate in 4 colleges and then the central administration. We had an issue with resource also, procurement officers. Now we have procurement officers in all the colleges. We've improved upon the resource in terms of the procurement officers, decentralizing into the colleges and also the heavy duty units.
It's been 20 years since Ghana introduced the use of antiretroviral therapy, transforming care, reducing morbidity and mortality, and improving the lives of persons living with HIV and AIDS. 70-year-old Madame Elsie Ayes shares her experience on being on antiretroviral therapy since her diagnosis 20 years ago.
I'll be 70 years old, and it is all due to being on antiretroviral treatments for the past 20 years. Many lives have been lost, but many lessons have been learnt, and the greatest one is the efficacy of consistently taking antiretroviral medication.
The Office of the Special Prosecutor has directed the release of the salaries for 902 out of 1,310 teachers which were withheld last week. But the three pre-tertiary unions in education at a news conference in Accra are requesting the OSP to release the salaries of the remaining teachers or face their wrath.
We want to send warning to the OSP. He may have authority, but when he begins to overstep his bounds to affect labor, we don't have any other choice than to tell him what is right.
Within our democratic space and the laws that we are working with, we don't think this thing must be tolerated. And as indicated, we think that if by the close of this week, OSP doesn't do the needful, whatever happens from next week, OSP should blame itself.
The Mental Health Authority is urging government to expedite the redevelopment of the Accra Psychiatric Hospital, which was added to the Agenda 111 project. The project was scheduled to begin in September 2022.
The redevelopment, we were told, was part of the Agenda 111 program. It's been 2 years now, and we are still waiting on the government.
Well, there's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up next, President Akufo-Addo has a Valentine's gift for you. He's finally sacked Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta and reshuffled his ministers in a major shakeup, barely 9 months to election 2024. A move too little, too late, or just in time? Did it make you smile on Valentine's Day today? We have a conversation, including the thoughts of former chair of the NPP, Freddie Blair, on this matter. As always, your thoughts are welcome. Let's get into it here on Ghana Tonight. Now, let's get straight into this matter. The details of what's happened earlier today to see who has been moved to where and who the new faces especially are, and those who are coming in as new ministers, quote unquote, for that matter. This was contained in the press statement that emanated from the presidency earlier today. In fact, these names had already been making the rounds prior to this morning, but the official communication from the presidency just cemented the details that we had last night. But take a look at this, at least what we do know so far and how things played out here on Ghana Tonight and the reactions so far. Let me just put it on record. That would have Professor Bafo Agyemendua, who is a former senior United Nations governance expert, joining us shortly, plus Franklin Kujo, who is also the founding president of Imani Africa. They're going to be joining me for a conversation on this reshuffle, which a number of people have described as too little, too late, and whether or not this is going to make any significant impact. 10 months to election 2024 going forward, especially taking into consideration the number of months that these ministers will take to settle and even understand the workings of the ministries they've been sent to, and then also taking time to do their own campaign, because a number of them are ministers and members of parliament. In fact, all these new ministers who have been appointed, those who have been reshuffled, they are members of parliament who will go and campaign in their various constituencies as well. So it brings a lot of dynamics to the conversation. But take a look at this. This is how the picture looks like as per the information that was put out earlier. First off, we had from the Ministry of Health, Dr. Bernard Okoboy now leaves the National Health Insurance Authority as a CEO back to that ministry where he was earlier. And then also Ophelia Mensah Hayford getting into the Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation Ministry. And then we have Dakwa Newman. She comes in as one of the new faces, Gender, Children, Social Protection. In fact, one of the youngest ministers, in fact, if not the youngest, to occupy that portfolio in this country. Then Lydia Sairam Al-Hassan, the Member of Parliament for the Ayawaso West Wuogon constituency, comes in as a Sanitation and Water Resources Minister, also one of the new faces that we're seeing. And then another set of new faces, Titus Glover, comes in as a Greater Accra Regional Minister. He's had a stint as Member of Parliament before, and then also a number of portfolios that he's held over the period. So he also comes in, a former Tema East Member of Parliament, Titus Glover, taking that position as well. That was held by the Ayawaso Central Constituency Member of Parliament, talking about Henry Korte. Now he's a Greater Accra Regional Minister designate. And then you have Daniel Machato, who also heads to the OT region, also one time with the Ghana Institute of Journalism, Daniel Machato there. And then we have another set of new faces. Vincent Eko comes in as one of the new faces that we are seeing based on this announcement that we have so far. He heads to the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development as a deputy minister in that ministry, deputy minister designate. He's also the Member of Parliament there for the Tafo constituency. Then also, there's the Old Tafo constituency. It was previously the PRO for the Education Ministry, Vincent Asifua. And then also sits on two committees in Parliament, the House Committee and the Education Committee. Sylvester Tete. Guess what? Yesterday, Sylvester Tete was in the news for very interesting reasons, having engaged in a near brawl with Kennedy, Japan, not knowing he was going to be giving some good news, at least this morning. He's heading to the Information Ministry as a Deputy Minister Designate for the Information Ministry. Sylvester Tete, Member of Parliament for the English Yaman constituency. There you have it. So, yeah, these are the new faces, really. And the old ones who have been moved around, we'll be showing you as we go on here on Ghana Tonight. But let me welcome Professor Bafo Ajimendua. He's a former senior United Nations governance advisor and then also a governance expert joining us on this matter. Professor Bafo Ajimendua, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. First of all, I mean, I'm looking at this list, and President Kufuor has done at least the first reshuffle, I mean, in the real sense of the word, over the last 7 years and over that he's been in power. More like a Valentine's gift today. Too little, too late, you would say?
Because there was a time Ghanaians were really calling for serious reshuffle of government, including some members of the president's own party who are in parliament. And I understand there was even a meeting between that group and the president, particularly over the continuing office of the finance minister. So people expected that that would be an opportunity for the president to reshuffle his government, but nothing happened. I guess he's a bit impervious to public sentiments and therefore unresponsive when these sentiments are raised. Nonetheless, now we hear that he's done it. So the question is, with only about 10 months to go, what can these new appointees do to really improve on governance under this president? Many of these people will be engaging in campaign once the season begins in earnest by June. And what time would they have to dedicate to the new ministries or positions that they've been appointed to? So in terms of real impact of these announced changes, I'm not sure what kind of positive impact it will have on governance in the country.
I see. But then I'm also thinking about, especially, sorry, I don't know if we have the connection now. Hello, Prof. Okay, so we had a little freeze in the connection. But for politics, Professor Bafo Ajimendua, optics and timing is of the essence, right? Would you say that with the announcement today, it has ticked the boxes of the right optics and the right timing for this announcement, or it has actually missed these very essential ingredients in taking decisions as far as governance is concerned, talking about politics and then with the optics and then also the timing of this decision?
At all, because as I say, the expectation was raised, it never came. And if people are not going to see the use of the new announcement in terms of repositioning some people, and moreover, not bringing in fresh individuals, these are old hands who have just been reshuffled into new places. Perhaps the dismissal of Mr. Kenneth Oriata, Finance Minister, might be the main case here, because he was one individual and a few others who were expected to be out of government. But as I see it, I'm not sure his replacement, even though he's a very solid individual, if you look at the credentials of Dr. Adams, but I believe that he's not going to have enough time to change anything. I'm sure he's going to continue what has been put in place without any radical changes in how the Ministry of Finance and the financial management of this country has been over the past 7 years. So in that respect, I'm not sure it's going to change the optics. I'm not very sure at all about that.
And in fact, that bit about changing the optics, and let me bring in Franklin Kujo as well, who's joining us, is the founding president of Imani Africa, also a governance analyst. Mr. Kujo, thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. On that point that Professor Bafo ended on, and I've seen headlines that reads that Kenneth Oriata sacked, etc. I mean, clearly, no doubt, he's the highlight of this reshuffle that President Kufuor has done. But with what we're reading, and if this is anything to go by, it appears that the reports making the round that he may have been given another role. I mean, I'm talking about Kenneth Oriata. So what is the new job description of Kenneth Oriata based on this report, which I know you have seen as well, about he being given a new role?
Well, Alfred, you're perfectly right. First of all, we are waiting for the presidency to tell us exactly what he'll be doing. But we also do, or we can infer from what has been said. We read a statement from Asasi Radio, basically saying that he's going to be a special advisor on the economy of the presidency, but at the same time, will be a special envoy when it comes to international investments and capital markets. Now, don't forget that Oriata cut his teeth basically as a private investment manager, more or less. I mean, he has experience when it comes to the capital markets and when it comes to investments in general. So it looks to me that role is quite bigger. I can infer from what it means, essentially, that he probably would have every say or a lot of say in when it comes to big ticket investment that Ghana will be negotiating. And at the same time, maybe advising when it comes to whether we are right to go to the capital markets. And when we do, in fact, we'll still play a significant role. That seems to me like a much bigger role than the finance ministry or the finance minister would play anyway.
You talk about that being a much bigger role based on analysis. At least that report or that media report you made reference to quotes him being reportedly appointed as the senior presidential advisor. I'm talking about Kenneth Oriata, senior presidential advisor on the economy. That report you made reference to also indicates that he will serve as the president's special envoy on international investments and capital markets. I mean, it appears Kenneth Oriata's new role in terms of this portfolio that's been announced, if so confirms that, at least based on the reports we're reading now, it gives him more functional powers and some executive powers, even beyond that of the finance minister, correct?
Well, without a doubt, just say that it could be like the mafia don, because what it essentially means is that, I mean, at the level of the finance ministry, they can do all the paperwork, but at least it will have Oriata say so when it comes to investments and when it comes to going to the capital markets or any development on the capital markets at all, he would have a say in it.
See, but Professor Bafo, I mean, if what we are saying is anything to go by, and what Franklin Kujo just made reference to about this report is anything to go by, and that Kenneth Oriata, if it is confirmed that this portfolio we're hearing is eventually confirmed by the presidency, it's not going to reduce his influence at all in this government, because, in fact, his new portfolio makes him maybe more functionally powerful than the finance minister, based on what Mr. Franklin Kojo has just said.
Actually, I just read that he's been appointed as a special envoy on investments and something capital market. If that is true, that means he's going to continue to manage the country's finances at that level. So I don't really know what game the president is playing with the people of Ghana. If he wanted Ken to remain at his position, I think he could have done it. He should have simply kept him there, irrespective of the protestations of Ghanaians, because most Ghanaians have given up on him anyway. The fact is that, and I do talk a lot to people, I travel quite a bit, and I'm not hearing anything quite positive about the president's leadership so far as the management of the country's resources are concerned. So if Mr. Oforiatta, who's a very good man, by the way, and he's a very loyal and dedicated person to the president, perhaps that's why it's difficult for the president to let him go completely. So if he wants him to play another role from a different angle, and is going to be exercising supervision over the finance ministry, and the newly appointed person was his deputy, then I'm just wondering what the new minister can do, you know? So it's a very interesting situation, and I'm not too sure what the president is seeking to do over the next 10 months. And that's why many people are dismissing this reshuffle as less. In fact, if it may only be in the fact that the president can go on record to having a reshuffle the government, because there has been no serious reshuffle for the past years. Getting to it, many people are not taking this seriously anyway. Let me be blunt. A lot of people don't consider this reshuffle as anything meaningful.
I see. And Mr. Franklin Kojo, let me conclude with you. So, Professor Mendia says a lot of people, indeed, as confirmed, don't take this reshuffle as anything meaningful. Is it the same chorus as well for you?
First of all, we need to understand one thing. Does it mean his sacking probably was only because he said he wasn't going to the IMF, and eventually we had to go to the IMF? That's what I understand. Unless, of course, we are being told that he is obviously superintended with mental failure at the ministry. I don't think that explanation has come out quite well, right? Because if it did, then everybody who worked at that ministry must be going anyway. So I'm not too sure that the reasons why he left is essentially because he underperformed, but more so the fact that he said he didn't go to the IMF. Whatever it is, this new role is much bigger, and it places much more executive authority. He has much more executive power, and he can advise as to whether we should move in a certain direction, even before the finance ministry can then do the paperwork. So it virtually reduces the finance ministry to maybe just pushing papers, really.
Thank you. Pretty interesting. We'll see how things play out in the coming days, whether it's going to be official confirmation of this reported new role of Ken Oforiatta. Let me just put it on record that this report has been making the rounds. The presidency has not denied it as yet through any statement or whatsoever. So we're waiting for either the denial or the confirmation of this said report with a new portfolio for Ken Oforiatta, which per Franklin Kojo, thank you for joining us, Imani, Africa founding president. If that portfolio is going to give him more executive power than even the finance minister. To you as well, Professor Bafo Ejimendia, former senior governance advisor at the United Nations. Thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. Well, one person who's also been talking about this is the former chair of the NPP, Freddie Wasime. He's been sharing his thoughts with my colleague, Beatrice Edu. Take a look.
It depends on the strategy. It depends on what he wants to achieve later on. It depends on the efforts or the strategy of the party as to what to do come next 4 years, assuming we want to be as it is, which we are determined to be in power.
So what is the objective? What is the objective of this?
We've now, as it were, elected a new flag bearer. Maybe the change, I'm not saying so, but maybe the change is part of the strategy to ensure that our breaking the 8.
So what you're saying, my understanding is that eventually you agree with, or you're actually taking the same path that the current flag bearer criticized the former president for, because in 2016
he has not, so far I'm concerned, he has not criticized the president. Please, I don't agree with you that the vice president and our
the current flag bearer,
yes, had criticized the president. He hasn't.
No, I'm not talking about President Akufo-Addo. I'm talking about former President John Mahama. He's actually doing the same thing that he criticized the former President John Mahama for. In 2016, when the former President John Mahama reshuffled his ministers, then vice presidential candidate Dr. Bawumia, who is now the flag bearer of the party, said that this reshuffle, and I'm just summarizing what he said, paraphrasing rather, that it was for elections and not necessarily for any meaningful change. So it means that that is also the strategy.
Partly, the strategy may be partly so. Me, as I said, I will not be very sure what it is. I said that I'm only conjecturing that that could be part of the strategy. That why not? We're going for another election, and the changes may be towards preparing for the next election. But you will agree with me, as there had been incessant calls that there ought to be some kind of change. And I said I would have preferred it if it had come a little earlier. Be it as it may, it's better late than never.
Mr. Blair,
and that's what has happened.
You're saying that partly this reshuffle could be towards breaking the 8. Partly, you agree with that. Is the MPP being fair with Ghanaians that this period when we wanted you to make changes so that our lives could be better, you refused to make the changes, but now you're making the changes because you're looking forward to winning an election?
I disagree with you that looking for the change in terms of reshuffle at the time people were calling for was necessarily meant to make our life better. Instead of that, it was worse at the time that
but
we were calling.
But the MPP MPs, for instance, on the argument...
It depends on their strategy. It depends on what they consider to be. It's not that Ken Ofori-Atta was making life unbearable for Ghanaians. We're negotiating, as it were.
But the argument of those who wanted...
We're negotiating with the IMF. And that's exactly what he was involved in.
But the argument...
And yet, look, some of these changes may be painful. And sometimes people will rather target those who are involved in the negotiation.
I mean, running an economy is a collective thing. Running an economy...
Good.
It's understood.
For what was absolutely necessary for us to go through.
Yes, but it is understood
and for that reason, some people call for the head of the one who was involved. Indeed, sometimes they even call for the head of a government, the whole government. Only later I want to know that maybe it was a mistake. Maybe people were not understood from it. In this case, the president made it clear that, look, we are involved in a negotiation for some assistance to alleviate the kind of difficulties that we are going through, and that we needed him to be there to help negotiate. And when he's finished with it, if people think it is necessary,
yes,
he will do so. Now, I find nothing wrong with that. But if you interpret it to mean that because of the call, it means for him to leave so that life will be better for Ghanaians, you seem to suggest that him, as an individual, was punishing this country.
You see, the argument of critics is that in as much as the finance minister individually is not solely responsible for the economic quote-unquote mess, as critics call it.
I refuse to say that economic mess. Please, what I'm saying is that we had challenges. There were difficulties we were going through. I don't want to repeat what we all did. Then you want to make it, or you want to repeat some accusation that some people have been leveling, so that it was a mess, and that the government has been, as it were, involved in mismanaging the economy under the circumstances.
I am only paraphrasing.
I disagree with you. If you have if a couple of days, if you are listening to what Dr. Bawumia
we'll go into that shortly.
You will realize that, as he gave the facts and figures to show that even under those circumstances which were not created by government, which was worldwide, that was the COVID and the...
But we understand that...
Please, when we had gone through that. We have handled it better. But indeed, when you compare it as to the previous years, within that time, within previous years of the government that was before us, our performance has been better. These are facts that you can't run away
but Mr. Blay, these are
and
facts.
And if you
but
want to make it look
time,
like as if, in spite of what had happened, you want to blame government and consider it to be a mess, it's an opinion
but
that's
you see,
not very
at
fair.
the same time that you establish the other side of the fact, the other side of the fact is also that there were a lot of borrowings that were made in anticipation that we're going to make monies from our oils and other things that we export. But if eventually, because COVID struck, then it exposed.
No, I don't remember
really
that we were borrowing, that we were going to make so much money from our oil.
At the time COVID struck, Ghana had not borrowed because, as far as I remember, we piled up our debt.
Before COVID broke out, the economy was performing very well. Ghana was among the most touted countries that are doing very well in terms of its development, fast-growing economies, particularly among the third world countries. And Ghana was among the leading ones. But of course, nobody expected COVID. Although some of you may argue that we should not even blame COVID for whatever problems that we encountered. The world faced it. A lot of economies faced it. And difficulties were all over, even among the developed countries.
I remember all those things, but
what will be your argument?
But I just also.
Well, so that's Freddie Blay there, former chair of the NPP. Well, listen, this is a conversation that's not ending here because there's been a number of reactions which we're still going to test. So stay with us here on Ghana Tonight and our subsequent conversations. But coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, our manifesto tracker series, we call it the Manifesto Check. Tonight, we focus on the state of the free Wi-Fi for senior high schools and tertiary level, that policy that was announced in the NPP's 2020 manifesto. We also have a conversation on a promise for one teacher, one laptop. You remember that promise as well? It wasn't captured in the manifesto, but it was a promise that was made to teachers. There's a development to this here on Ghana Tonight, as always. And this is one that we have decided to dedicate to accountability, to ensure that politicians do what they said they will do. If they fail to do so, we obviously will not forget. And this is what Manifesto Check is all about. Yeah, well, accountability is an integral part of this democracy, if it's going to work. My colleague, Dennis Poaberi Wadam, as always, is joining me in the studio. We have a conversation getting into the 2020 manifesto of the NPP, specific promise about the free Wi-Fi to senior high schools and the tertiary institutions as well. Dennis, what did we find?
Well, so we are continuing with our tracking of the manifesto promises in the 2020 manifesto of the New Patriotic Party. We are still in the education sector. Today, we are looking at the promise that they were going to complete the provision of free Wi-Fi to all senior secondary schools and public tertiary institutions and training colleges. Now, mind you, the previous ones that we did, there was usually the section where they would make the promise and how far they had gone. Even though this was applicable, they didn't capture it as such, but they captured this under what they were going to do moving forward. So when you look at the manifesto, there were other 19 promises that they made. That was what they're going to do moving forward. This is one of them. So, but even before 2020, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia had mentioned that they promised to give free Wi-Fi to secondary schools. And he gave thanks to the education minister and also the communications minister then, and that he salutes them for having delivered 80%.
80%?
Yes, that was September 2020, even before we went to the election. So they had delivered 20% of this particular promise, according to the vice president.
Hold on, 80%?
80%.
Of this free Wi-Fi to senior high schools.
Perhaps that explains why they captured it as complete deprivation.
Oh,
it suggests
right.
that something was already in motion.
Something was in the works.
But as we go on, you understand how the dynamics worked out. On November 2021, Vice President again now puts numbers to what amounts to the
80%.
80% he's talking about.
Okay.
He said then that 710 schools had benefited from this particular policy. This is said at the 60th anniversary of the speech and prize giving day of the Navrongo Senior High School.
I see. That's your school?
My hometown.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes. So,
anyway.
However, checks revealed, and also information from the Ghana Education Service.
Okay.
This was sourced by the Fourth Estate when they invoked the right to information law to get information as to how many schools. They actually gave them a breakdown of the schools. It turned out that as of 2020, 523 schools had been connected to the Wi-Fi.
Okay, not the 710.
No.
Okay.
So the data indicated that at the end of 2020, 523, which is 79% of the 663 schools had been connected to the Wi-Fi. So in total, the schools were 663, and of that, 523 of them were connected to the Wi-Fi. The remaining beneficiary schools received the government Wi-Fi in 2021. So if you go by this particular data, what it showed is that clearly it puts the vice president's figures of 710 schools as of 2021 into dispute.
That's based on verifiable data
from
that
the Fourth
all our
Estate
viewers can
from
find.
The Ghana Education Service. When you look at that data, they even give specifics of the regions and the number of schools that benefited from it. Fast moving forward, the African Education Watch decided to do a survey to track to see how this particular policy was working in schools. Per their survey, they found out that about 75% of the free Wi-Fi sampled in senior high schools were not working properly.
So,
based on that, executive director was making calls, that's Kofi Asare, was making calls that there needed to be an audit into this policy. So they would not just be paying money and not getting value for money.
It's a very important
Be that as
point.
it may, it's a promise delivered or still in the process of
being delivered.
But how well is it working? That's where we find ourselves now.
Very good question that you asked there, Dennis. And because you make reference to Africa Education Work, thankfully, we have Kofi Asare, who's the Executive Director, the man you just talked about, joining us on Zoom. Kofi Asare is the Executive Director of the Africa Education Work, one of the foremost civil society organizations we have in the education space in this country. Kofi, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight.
Good evening, Albert, and good evening to your cherished audience.
So, yes, as was quoted by Dr. Bawumia, we've seen that even though the Wi-Fi had been installed in a number of senior high schools, as of 2020, 523, per your checks, the Wi-Fi, 75% of the Wi-Fi connected was not working. So, what more did you find in there?
Well, I think that it is important to contextualize the tracking of manifesto promises. Promises are made for the purposes of achieving certain outcomes, not just output. So when a promise is made to provide Wi-Fi for senior high schools and then colleges and then universities, it is actually an admission of the fact that the students and then the staff require the internet for administrative and also for research work. For that matter, the Wi-Fi must be functioning and of good quality to facilitate research and also administrative work. So that context is very, very important. It means that we are not just talking about connectivity, we're talking about access and then the quality of access. Now we had concerns. We had various concerns raised by heads of senior high schools complaining about the quality of the Wi-Fi. And so we decided to undertake a rapid survey of 150 senior high schools in June last year. And when we undertook the survey, it revealed that 78% of the schools that had Wi-Fi connected were not functioning. So the Wi-Fi wasn't functioning in 78% of the schools that we sampled out of 150. And it went further to reveal certain levels of despondency lack of accountability mechanisms in the system, because we're paying 6.3 million, or we're supposed to pay 6.3 million annually to Busy Internet for providing this Wi-Fi every month. Okay, that was what the contract said. But you found out that in many of the schools, for example, apart from the fact that only 22% of the senior high schools sampled had functioning Wi-Fi, about 55% of the senior high schools had experienced downtime for about a year. And another 36% had experienced downtime for about 6 months. And another 9% had experienced downtime for about 2 years. So obviously, there were serious issues with value for money. That's why we called on Auditor General to commission a special audit into the delivery of the free Wi-Fi. And we are happy that since then we've been working closely with the relevant institutions. The Auditor General has commissioned a special audit. They've far progressed in the exercise, and very soon the report will be out. And so it is our expectation that the report of the special audit will go to improve the quality of this particular procurement, because we believe that adequate accountability mechanisms were not, factored into the arrangement. The reason why, on paper, yes, you've connected it, but the reality is that in about 78% of the schools that we sampled, the Wi-Fi wasn't working between 6 months and up to 2 years.
I see. Very instructive detail that you put out there. So 150 senior high schools you surveyed in this research, and out of the 150 senior high schools, 78% of these schools did not have the Wi-Fi working. And we were paying 6.3 million every year for the Wi-Fi that's not working in the senior high schools?
Well, we are supposed to pay the terms of the contract. I'm aware that there were some, debts to the company with internet and other issues, but contractually, we were obliged to pay 6.3. So whether we're owing or not, we realized that there wasn't even a monetary mechanism. It appeared payment of the internet being supplied was based on, was not based on real-time functionability data. There wasn't any mechanism, because this is a centralized contract signed at the top of the Ministry of Education, being delivered to over 700 senior high schools across the country. And so the basis for checking whether the internet was working before payment, wasn't properly determined. I'm talking about schools that were in Accra, even Presec. Then Presec didn't even have internet. So I won't talk about schools that were in the remote locations. No, prominent schools in Accra, access to internet was a problem, and we had this contract arrangement in place. And so for us, the free Wi-Fi, yes, it was delivered by way of connectivity. But free Wi-Fi, the essence is to provide reliable Wi-Fi so that teachers can be able to have access to Wi-Fi for research work. There was a school, I think, in one of the schools we visited in Enum Presby. It took about 30 minutes for Gmail to load the Gmail homepage. 30 minutes, So but on paper it has been connected. There's Wi-Fi there, free, but Gmail takes 30 minutes to load. How can teachers use this facility? So our research was aimed at improving the delivery of the service, and we hope that government will factor in the outcomes of the Auditor General's report to strengthen, value for money and accountability systems around. I believe that provision of Wi-Fi should be centralized. It has to be decentralized, at least to the regional level or to the school level. Schools pay for their Wi-Fi, government give them the money. It becomes easier. If the school is not getting the Wi-Fi from the internet, they don't pay them. But when it's centralized, it becomes difficult for government to monitor and determine, compliance.
Kofi, thank you for the good job you're doing. And on this journey, I'm sure you're one of the collaborators in this, so we'll definitely be calling on you for all of the support as you're doing now. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Kofi Asare is the executive of the Africa Education Watch, one of the foremost society organizations in the education space, and they are with us here on Manifesto Check on Ghana Tonight, and looking at the manifestos in the education space. They've done quite some work. And so, Dennis, he confirms a number of things that you put out there. So indeed, it is the case that they surveyed 150 senior high schools, 78% of them did not have their Wi-Fi. Even though the Wi-Fi has been installed in the schools, they're not working.
Yes.
And we are paying for it.
And others are not working satisfactorily.
Anyway, but there's another aspect of the issue that we're talking. Let's conclude
yes,
on this.
That basically talks about the one teacher, one laptop policy. Originally, this is not a manifesto policy, but some way, somehow, it became a government partnered policy. Oftentimes, people try to disassociate government from it, but if you look at the genesis of this particular policy, there's no way you would disassociate government from it. And I say this because when you look at this was the 2021 State of the Nation address, where the president had announced that he was happy that government was facilitating the acquisition of some 280,000 laptops for members of NATS, National Association of NAGRATs, and concerned teachers. Thereafter, there was a grand launch, and this launch was done by the Vice President himself, where he himself had reiterated government's commitment to push through this policy. Now, per this policy, every teacher from kindergarten to the senior high school was supposed to get a laptop. Government was bearing 70% of the cost, and the teachers themselves bearing 30% of the cost. That 30% translated to 509 cedis, which was deducted at source from the teachers' salaries. We are learning that some of the teachers, even though have got their laptops, others are yet to get. Those who have not got their laptops, they are angry. They are demanding questions from the government, from the Ministry of Education, the teacher unions themselves, and of course the company that was a partner to this particular project.
How many laptops were supposed to be procured? What's the figure in the presence?
No, so
this is 200 and what?
280,000 laptops
have been procured.
No, they were facilitating their procurements.
I see.
So this was
as in 2021.
Yes.
Okay. Well, guess what? Right after this quick break, we have just gotten notice that a group of teachers who identify themselves as Ghana National Association of Teachers on Campus, NATOC, they're saying that they have not received their laptops. They're watching us.
Yes,
they're watching us right now. So they'll join us on Zoom after this. We'll find out what the situation is. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. This is Ghana Tonight. Manifest. Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight, and Dennis still with me. Let's conclude this matter on Manifesto Check. Banayo Joshua is the president of the Ghana National Association of Teachers on Campus. Thank you for joining us, Joshua. Let's establish this. What's the composition of this group that you are president of?
Thank you to you and to your cherished viewers and listeners. We are a body called NATOC, which is Ghana National Association of Teachers on Campus. And it comprises of teachers that have taken steady leave and they are studying in the various universities across the country. And we exist in 14 universities across Ghana, including Amstead, Marseille, Amstead, Mampong, Legon, UCC, Ejumako, and UDS, including other schools. So we are basically teachers on further studies in the various universities across the country.
What's the relationship between your group and the one teacher, one laptop policy we're talking about?
Okay, so like I said, we are teachers, and we come in because I think the government of the nation saw it necessary to provide teachers with laptops, for which some amount of monies were deducted from all teachers' salaries in November 2021. So being professional teachers as well, our monies were deducted for the same TM1 laptops, please. So that's how it came in.
I say, but is it your claim that your monies were deducted, or some monies were deducted from allowances or monies due you, and for this laptop, and you have still not received your laptops?
Exactly, sir. Just like any other professional teacher across Ghana was deducted, we were also deducted the same amount, sir.
But how much was deducted? How much was deducted from your allowance? And when was this deducted?
Sorry, 509 Ghana cedis, I think, for all teachers. It was a uniform price for all teachers. And the government of the country took part of the cost of production. So each teacher was levied 509 Ghana cedis, 55 pesos, in November 2021.
See, but we know for a fact that some teachers have received their laptops. At least some of them have been sending us messages. How come over 9,000 of you have not received your laptops?
Yes, some teachers have received, but our case, none of the teachers have received. As we speak, I have with me the data of all the 14 universities and their respective numbers. And we are numbering 9,100 plus. So the distribution of the laptops was made such that they started from the senior high school teachers, then they came down to the junior high school teachers, then to the primary school teachers. And we're told that teachers on study leave with pay are being captured under offices. That is, we are captured under the respective regional offices where our schools are located. So we were supposed to be served together with all the staff of the various regional district and municipal education offices. But the situation is very bad on our side because none of our members have received, not a single person from NATO has received his or her laptop. Meanwhile, we know that teachers in the senior high schools, about 80% or more of them have been served. Similarly, those in junior high school and primary school teachers, they have equally been served. A greater percentage of them have been served.
I see.
But our case is quite pathetic and sad because not just a single person has received his or her laptop.
Interesting.
And that is our greatest concern.
Indeed, this is a matter that we're going to follow quite closely. And Joshua, thank you. Joshua Banayo, thank you for bringing attention to this matter. And as we have talked about it, we're going to be finding out exactly why you have not received your laptop. 9,000 of you. Joshua Banayo is with these teachers who have not received a laptop, but 9,000 of them. Dennis, there's some additional information
yes,
we're getting.
A lot more people are commenting on our Facebook stream, for instance. Albert says that I'm a teacher. I'm yet to receive my laptop, even though my money was deducted.
Okay.
Claim received my laptop. And somebody, Acho Kwame, says that most of the TM laptops provided to teachers are not functioning. You can do your own research on that. Teachers are making frantic efforts to buy new laptops. It can be likened to something laptop. Okay,
interesting. Anyway, but this is a matter that, thank you to the teachers who are watching and also giving us some further information on this matter. It helps us all in trying to get the answers for you and some level of accountability. Dennis, as always, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this matter. The manifesto check on Ghana Tonight, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every week till election date, December 7. This is a journey that we're on. And on behalf of the rest of the team, I want to say thank you so much for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight. Join us same time tomorrow. I am Alfred Kansi. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight.